What's up guys, YST here and welcome back to another Raid Shadow Legends video. And today, I really want to do a deep breakdown into the core mechanics of Astranyx The Dark Fae, who is going to be the boss for this current Doom Tower rotation. And I know that a bunch of you guys have a big issue with this whenever it comes into effect. And then straight after I break down the mechanics, I'm going to be going to a bunch of champions that I feel can definitely take down this boss, granted that you pair multiple together because of the way that the boss works. If that does sound exciting, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and this will be a bit of a longer one, my apologies, but I really want to get as much information out there, so if anybody that has been struggling can actually get through this boss as efficiently as possible. So what we're going to do first is just talk about the kit. So with the A1, she attacks all enemies and has a 100% chance of placing a leech debuff on each enemy for 2 turns. Now, this is going to allow Astranyx to heal by 18% of the damage inflicted, so making sure that she doesn't take a turn is definitely going to be beneficial, and I'll show you how to do that. With the Dark Tendrils, she attacks all enemies and will steal buffs and do specific things depending on the amount of affinity champions you've got in your team. So, first of all, she will steal a random buff from each enemy according to the number of magic champions on your team, and that will be 1 buff per magic champion. So hypothetically, if you've got multiple royal guards, for example, then you're going to get extra buffs stolen here. Secondly, we'll steal the Terminator from each enemy according to the number of force champions on the team. Today I will be using C's, and he is force, so it could get detrimental, right? For the 10% for each force champion, which will stack up to 50% of course. And then has a 25% chance of placing a True Fear debuff on each enemy for 1 turn, and the chance increases by 25% for each void champion on the team, meaning that you can have a 100% chance to place a fear if you've got 4 void champions on your team, right? So trying to avoid that as much as possible would be nice, but of course we're going to try and make them not do any of this. Finally, with Spirit Champions, she'll heal by 10% of a max HP per Spirit Champion. So once you start pairing all of these together, based on all the different affinities, you can imagine how much of an impact it's going to have on your compositions. I'm going into the Fairy Storm. She attacks all enemies and all living allies will team up to join this attack, and damage increases by 25% for each living ally. So this will basically be the mirror copy of yourself will team up with the attack to attack yourself, which is definitely nasty, but there's a damage increase, which is where you probably like, oh my god, what's happening here, man? This is terrible. But as long as you got full control, you're going to be able to gain the upper hand, because although that is the mirror copy of your champions, you still get to go first, meaning if you've got Terminator manipulators to decrease theirs or decrease speed, for example, you'll be able to get that control very similar to an arena encounter. With the Dark Abduction, this is when you actually first come up against the boss. Well, actually that's the Fae Mirror, because she places a perfect veil on herself for 3 turns and then will spawn mirror copies of your champions onto their team. And what you want to do is control them, kill them as quickly as possible, and avoiding multiple tanky champions will actually be beneficial here, because you want to kill them as quickly as possible and then gain that Terminator control very similar to the Fire Knight. But leading back into that Dark Abduction, she will banish 1 enemy champion and spawns a mirror copy of them onto your team or their team, and then will place a True Fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Now, this isn't nice, it's terrible, but what if I told you that there's actually a secret way to understand who she's going to steal at any given time and any given scenario? And this is something that I've not really discussed prior to this video, although I have made multiple Dark Fae videos in the past. So what we're going to do is, and also Terminator reduction effects are decreased by 50%, just in case you feel like, why is it not like scaling properly here? So this is a team that I've actually brought up for the test server. I haven't got too long to showcase this, but I thought it was very important to show stage 120. And I'm not saying that to use this team, this is the only option. As I said, this will be broken into 2 different segments where I'll showcase so many options, guys. But I want to show you the fundamentals and what I'm trying to bring in here. So C's is going to work as a champion to clear the mirror copies, but he also has a passive to reduce turn meter and put himself under Veil. And you might be thinking, why are you bringing in Veil here? Like, is this really going to help you? Well, it actually has some chances to determine who the banished champion is going to be. And I don't think anybody's ever spoken about this as far as I'm aware. So it's kind of news to me as well. I was just doing a bunch of playtesting, and I was like, wow, this changes so much in this game, especially when you talk about Cs. Lyssandra's going to be our speed aura, so 24%, and then of course she does turn meter reduction, increased speed, and she's just a phenomenal champion to bring in. But another great option for Lyssandra would be a Deacon Armstrong. You can play a very similar effect, but you just don't get that increased speed, you just get the turn meter manipulation. With Allure, she actually has an A1 to crack the turn meter and also do the AoE sleep and drop defense to go up against your mirror copies, so your nuker champion, i.e. the Cs, will have an easier chance in killing them. We've then got Royal Guard and Coldheart for max HP, but they also utilize some turn meter reduction effects and decreased speed coming out from Royal Guard, making him one of the MVPs for this boss. And before we get into this as well, that if you head into hellhades.com and go to the Raid Shadow Legends stages tool, you can actually input the stage that you're doing, the rotation you're encountering, and also select the area that you're facing. It will show you all of the stats of the waves, and most importantly, the boss. So as you see here for stage 120, the resistance is 330 on the boss, so we're aiming for around 355. And the accuracy is 250, so you want to be scaling above that to make sure that your turn meter isn't getting resisted. So definitely worth going there for the specific stages to alter the speeds of your champions, for example. And also you see here 250 speed, so our champions are going to be above that threshold, but I'll also be changing that with the increased speed buff. So okay, what I'm going to do is go into this run, show you an example of how I would be actually autoing this. This is an auto team that I usually use on rotations. Apart from C's, he's a new option here. And he actually plays a very cool role. I've actually got a dedicated video coming for him maybe tomorrow, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But as you see here, we've kind of locked off specific abilities, so once we come up against the boss itself, we're not going to have any issues because we've got everything on cooldown. So because there's a lot of turn meter reduction, you can get multiple attacks in on these waves, so you're not mitigated in terms of health here. So once you come up against the boss itself, you can see that the mirror copy has been spawned, and now everybody that's on your team is going to be right beside Astranyx. Now, because of the way that we set it up in the waves, as I mentioned earlier, now on auto, we're going to reduce the turn meter. Deacon Armstrong, very good for this as well, but he also applies the drop defense, which we don't have in an AoE apart from the small variation of Allure here. So now what we could do is do this. And now we've got a bit of drop defense on, not everywhere. And now we can come through our nuke ability. Boom. And then boom. From here, we're going to have no issue in taking down this boss because we're going to have full turn meter control. Very similar to the finite, guys. Now, what I want you to pay close attention to on this next one, this is definitely going to be a victory, okay? So we're going to go through full turn meter control. It's pretty simple to see here. But what I'm really interested in showing is how it's going to work with the way that she banishes champions. So let's just say you don't have full control, you've got semi-control, and you have to kind of just deal with it because you might be just progressing, right? That's understandable. Well, somebody like a C's or just your lead target, depending on the situation, can actually alter who is going to be stolen at any given time. And what that's going to come down to is who has the highest attack in your composition. So we've just come up against the boss again. We're going to do the very same thing, okay? I'm going to just do auto for now. Kill everybody and boom. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to force the turn meter reduction at all, okay? And look who just got stolen, C's. And that is because he has got the highest attack in my team. So you can actually use this to your advantage and potentially make your slowest champion, that could be your nuker for instance, maybe a Ronda or whoever that may be, to actually choose who is going to get stolen. Maybe even somebody like an Allure because she doesn't scale off crazy damage. You might want to put her in the highest attack or whatever that may be. But you can definitely choose who's going to get banished on the second phase after the mirror copy goes down. Now, there is some actual changes to this, so I'm just going to come up against the boss again. So we've just come up against round 3 now. We're going to do the same exact thing. Do the setup, we're going to nuke everybody, get full control, and then I'm not going to manipulate the turn meter after I do this Heart Seeker. So let's just reduce this. We've got a bit of reduction there. But from here, we're not going to do it. Now, C's actually puts a perfect veil on himself, right? And I thought he might be able to go through that, but apparently it doesn't. So boom, boom, boom. You can see he is now under veil, okay? Now remember how C's got stolen? Well, what's going to happen is your lead position is going to get stolen. And I've actually tried this. I put Coldheart in the lead position. I then put Allure in the lead position and then Royal Guard. So I've switched this whole team around multiple times. And if a champion is under Veil, whether that be your nuker, I think somebody like Excruciator does it right, or whether that may be, it's a very niche scenario, but it might confuse some viewers out there. So if that champion has a Veil, they will not get stolen and your lead position is going to get it instead. Now, this could play to your advantage or it might not, because somebody like Lyssandra can gain turn meter control of us and kind of get us out of that rotation. So determining who your stun target is if you've got Veil in your team and you know you're going to get stolen is definitely something to pay note to. Like for me, somebody like Allure might be ideal here, or just the way I was using it before where Seas get stolen. I'd actually prefer that because he's so slow, I'll be able to come through and destroy him there. So we might be able to claw this back a little bit. Gonna reduce the turn meter. Boom. And yeah, from here, it's still gonna be a victory. So we got put in a very bad scenario there. We had lots of stuff going on. We're getting the AoEs. I wanted to show like a way where you don't have full control, or if something happens wrong, of how you can claw stuff back as well. But of course, the first way that I showed you with the presets and stuff is going to be the optimal way for the boss to never take a turn. As you see here, we came out of that bad situation. We're now back into the fight. We've got lots of damage coming out and we're going to be completely fine here. So I'll let this one run out. Let's see who the best damage was in this team. I believe it is Seas. Very cool champion, man. Like, because what he does is with his passive is he's got a non-resistible turn meter reduction. And I believe it's by 15%, but will go down to 7.5% with the way that the boss works, because it gets reduced by 50%, right? But just being able to take a turn and then nuke the enemies and play so many roles and alter the veils and stuff, I think he's a very cool option out there, especially that he's free. But of course, it takes a very long time to get, but I'll save that discussion for the in-depth video guide tomorrow. So we're coming through here pretty fast. It's around a 1 minute 30 seconds to 2 minutes on full auto. Boom and boom. So as you see here, 2 minutes 15 is my best time on this test server. But on my main account without the C's, I get a much better return with somebody like a ninja. But yeah, 1.1 million damage coming from C's went very well there. Now if we just head back into the actual Dark Fae again. Sorry guys. Just want to show you the presets for anybody that's interested. So I've got my fastest champion in Lyssandra because of the way she turn meter controls. We've locked off that skill on round 1 and 2. And first priority on the A3. Or round 3 should I say. Same thing here. We've locked it off. So then against the boss itself, I can get a bit of control. And then boom, we'll be completely fine. Caesar's going pretty fast as well because I want him to go immediately after these champions. Or should I say after Allure. So then Royal Guard and Coldheart can just come through and glass cannon it and control that turn meter immediately without having to focus on other allies as well. So just the way that I focused on it, but just remember, locking off specific skills in the waves is going to be beneficial. So that was my guide for the Dark Fae and the mechanics of how it works. Let's go into a bunch of options of the ones that I feel are the best in Raid. Let's get into it. Okay then, so we've just made it over to the index. We flew over in the portal. Thank you, Arbiter. And I'm going to be breaking down a bunch of champions here. Budget, epics, legendaries. I'm listing them all off. Not just anybody of turn meter reduction, but people that just provide multiple utility. So the first one is going to be the Allure. I'm only going to speak about the highlights here. Psychic Whip attacks 3 times at random, but if it's just one specific target, it's going to be all going on to that target and has a chance to reduce the turn meter by 25% on each critical hit. So very strong, very consistent, one of the most sought after champions for this boss. But also has the temptation, as you've seen with the example before, AoE drop defense and sleep, a bit of crowd control, the lower variation of decreased defense. It can be useful depending on the team, but I definitely use it a lot. But you could use other champions as well. Okay, so next up is going to be, is she in this faction as well? No, she's an orc. There's some options in here might actually blow your mind. So Bloodfeather. Is she from the Raz and Scarhide fusion? I believe so, right? I wouldn't say go for her over Razin, by the way, but just in case you get some spare ones. So on the A1 with Hunt down, she has an extra chance of inflicting a critical hit. Could be good for damage output. The Armor Breaker does place a decreased defense, which is also great for the boss itself if you don't have other options. But the highlight of her kit is attacks 1 enemy. Places a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns and decreases the target's turn meter by 50% and has an extra chance of inflicting critical hits. So if you can actually save this skill on a 3-turn cooldown, potentially put her in Relentless gear or Reflex, this is a significant amount of turn meter reduction on a 3-turn, and for somebody that's usually overlooked, if you don't have other options, could be one to make the list for sure. So the next one on the list is actually going to be from the Sacred Order, and it's an uncommon champion, and he goes by the name of Armiger. Now, this champion, a big shout out to Cold Brew, he loves him, has a chance of 30% turn meter reduction upon critical hits, so building with that 100% crit rate is definitely optimal for this champion. But he also has an enemy max HP nuke on his A2, so if you find that the boss is not going to take a turn here, you got them under control, you can afford to go through a later rest and rest the Astranyx The Dark Fae. So definitely one to watch out for. Next up in the Dark Elves is going to be Coldheart. We're going to be using her for that Heart Seeker, for that enemy max HP and turn meter reduction, which as you've seen in the run before, is going to blow up that boss like no man's business. So if you've got a Coldheart, potentially too, you might want to bring them in, right? For sure. I definitely use mine in my stage 120 team. She also has decreased accuracy, some poisons, under heal reduction, which she does place in an A1 as well. An overall phenomenal champion to bring in. Next up is going to be from the Demon Spawn, and it's actually Skimfos, a very underrated choice, which I did do a video on, which just didn't do too well. Maybe people just don't like Skimfos, apparently. But he actually brings so many cool things. With the Growing Hunger, he attacks one enemy 2 times and has a chance of placing decreased speed, and the second hit has a chance of reducing turn meter. Very strong A1. On the A2, we'll do an AoE skill with a decreased attack debuff to mitigate damage, which can actually be used as your setup phase. Open up with this, destroy some of those champions that don't have high sustainability, also place a decreased attack. And then also with the A3, with the Clutch of Woe, transfers all debuffs from this champion to a target enemy, then attacks that target. Will then steal 100% of the target's turn meter if this attack is critical. And it's very important to note the stealing part. So if you can steal a big bunch of that, it's going to enable him to take more turns and in Relentless gear. He is crazy, guys. So one of the best champions out there in the epic category for the Dark Fae. Next up is going to be, shout out to Ash from the Ogrin tribes. We got the Siegehulk. Somebody that I don't see anyone talking about, but he has a very good kit for the Dark Fae. A1, he has a chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15% if targets are under drop defense or decreased speed. And these are 2 things that we're going to be having up on the boss for a victory. Next up with the Thrashing Fit, places a 50% increased attack buff on this champion and then will attack all enemies and has a chance of placing that drop defense. So if you can put him in the place where I was using the C's, he's going to be amplifying his damage, he's going to be nuking the mirror copies, placing that drop defense, granted you've got accuracy stats, which is going to enable the battering ram to decrease the turn meter, very similar to Allure, just on a lower variation. But every little helps, right? But on the Siege Breaker, we'll place an increased crit rate, increased crit damage buff on this champion, and then has a chance of placing a 30% decreased speed for 2 turns. So he's played the role of damage, decreased speed, self-buffing, and turn meter reduction. Definitely one to look out for from the epics. Deacon Armstrong is next on the list. Very similar to the Lyssandra effect, because with the time compression, he fills the turn meters of all allies by 15%, will then decrease the turn meters of all enemies by 15%, followed by an extra turn. So what you're going to be doing is in that startup phase, have Deacon Armstrong as your fastest champion, fill your turn meters, drop their turn meters, lead into your crowd control or nuker champions, because he actually places a drop defense straight after this, which is amazing for going through the boss. With the Mace of Contempt, he actually places a Leech on the A1, as I mentioned before, allows you to heal by 18% of the damage inflicted, so if the boss manages to take a turn, Leech is one of the best forms when you have War Master or Giant Slayer masteries to bring your champions right back up to full. So don't underlook the Mace of Contempt here, and also a Speed Aura. Like if you're struggling to reach those thresholds, which are kind of excessive, look no further than a lead of Deacon. Briefly talking about Lyssandra as well, we've kind of spoken about her before, but she does the same thing as the Deacon, just to a better caliber, because she will place an increased speed in the same turn, whilst filling and decreasing by 30%, so double the value, but you do not grant an extra turn, and you don't bring in those crucial debuffs. But what she does on the exhaustion is fully deplete a target's turn meter, so she's got so much reduction all around the board. She's got a speed aura by 24% and a way of transferring debuffs from this champion to a target. So overall, one of the best options, if not the best, in my opinion. Fylja, next on the list from the dwarfs. Where is she? There we go. Now, this champion with the Righteous Evocation is interesting to me, because with the Boon Charm passive, if this champion has 2 or fewer buffs at the start of the turn, bear this in mind, we'll place an increased attack and increased crit damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. Now, that might not sound amazing, okay? But how this is going to work is, you come in, you get a self form of buffing, you only need 1 shot to make this work. You go through the Righteous Evocation and attack all enemies and fill this champion's turn meter by 15%. And then heal them by 15% of the damage inflicted. So what you're doing is actually amplifying the damage potential of this A3, kill your mirror copies, and then she also has a chance of fully depleting turn meter on the A2. Once again, remember, it's cutting 50% to the Dark Fae, but very beneficial, right? It's on the same caliber of somebody like a Coldheart, for instance, or the Exhaustion from Lyssandra. Very good, but it is on a 4-turn cooldown, so pairing it with other options is going to be vital for consistency. And then on the A1 has a chance of destroying max HP. But these two together as a setup phase and then maybe in reflex, putting the Crushing Eternity out. Very good option. And I'd actually consider it myself if I didn't have other ones. Royal Guard from the High Elves is next on the list. We love Royal Guard around here. And traditionally we know him as the Takedown King. The max HP, he nukes the Spiderlings, he nukes bosses. It's phenomenal. Even for the Hydra. But not just away from this, this 8-3 here with a hamstring is phenomenal because attacks 4 times at random, as we discussed earlier, 4 times at random on a single target, it can only go 1 place. Each hit has a chance of placing a 30% decreased speed, vital, and also a 60% chance of decreasing the turn meter by 25%, which is phenomenal. Like, it's a really high chance here being a 75%. Not too bad, right? Not too bad at all. And once you pair it with the max HP and the drop defense, you're going to have no problem bringing versatility out of Royal Guard. Going back into the dwarfs, we're going to be talking about Hurndig. That's not Hurndig. That's somebody else. A champion that I kind of recently acquired from that double legendary event. Not this one, but the one before that. And I was sleeping on this dude for very long, if I'm honest. And what you can do is, with a stasis strike, he attacks 1 enemy and fully depletes the target's turn meter, and will also attack all enemies if the first attack is critical. This AoE attack has a 75% chance, 100% chance once booked, of placing a weakened debuff for 2 turns, and will also place a burn on targets under a specific turn meter. He has a AoE with a drop defense and decreased accuracy, 2 vital debuffs for this boss, and then on the A1 can grant an extra turn and decrease the cooldown of Stasis Strike if this skill for 2 turns attacks when killing an enemy. So what you could potentially do is, if you can focus on a target you know you can nuke straight away, you can lead it with this, get the extra turn, go in with this one, fully deplete the turn meter, granted that you kill everybody. It's going to be a happy time, man. It's really, really good. But overall, you could even open up with the Arcane Tempest, kill everybody, then lean in with this. Like, there's so many ways to use Hurndig to your advantage for sure. Really, really good. Next up is going to be Grohak the Bloodied. I know people don't like him, but I love him. And he's a great champion because A1, decreased speed. Unbound Anger attacks all enemies and each critical hit will fill this champion's turn meter by 20%. So if you think about hypothetically, hit critting on everybody, that's almost an immediate turn. And if you can happen to kill your mirror copy, lead him with the Lord of War that will place a weaken and also steal the target's turn meter. So the synergy behind Grohak is, you open up with this, right? After the setup phase, kill the mirror copy, steal the turn meter of the boss, and then almost immediately take another turn and place a decreased speed on the A1. So that synergy of his kit can actually grant so many things immediately for consistency. He also has a speed aura, but it's only for dungeons, unfortunately. And I'd love to see a buff to that in particular. Or maybe something a little bit extra here. Maybe some debuffs in here or something. But overall, a great option out there. Oh my god, this list is huge today, guys. I really didn't want to miss any out because the more options, the better for anybody that thinks they can't do it, right? Next up is going to be from the Shadowkin, and it's going to be Jintoro. Jintoro is a phenomenal champion the way that he scales with the Oni's Rage, because he attacks one enemy, drop defense and weaken is getting placed from this, and would attack 5 times instead of 1 for every 4th use of this skill in the same round. So the more times you can use this in that battle, depending on the longevity of it, you might see a better result from Oni's Rage. You can also steal 100% of the target's turn meter, almost making him get another turn instantly. And then also on the A1, grants an extra turn if killing an enemy. So another cool way you could do this on Manu is, if you've got the right damage stats, is maybe, you know, 1 by 1, kill everybody the A1, and then pop off everything else. He's just a quirky champion that you can use in so many ways. Allure is next. Interesting choice. And she actually has a great kit for this, because she has AoEs. Once again, mirror copies, gonna be great. Attacks 3 times. But also on the lucky shot will decrease the target's turn meter by 100% and ignore specific buffs like shield and block damage. Traditionally known for the arena, it is on a 4-turn cooldown, right? It's not beneficial, but when you talk about relentless and reflex again, you might be able to proc this more, right? So putting her in the team is definitely not a bad option here, for sure. Next up is going to be Lorn the Cutter. I'm actually a recent fan of him. He's from the Ogrins. And on my free-to-play, I was actually really considering him for the Spider. But for the Dark Fae in particular, he has a great kit. He has a chance of healing himself. He has a chance of placing Leech, which is once again one of those vital stuff. He's got a heal reduction in his kit. And then he's also got Snatch into Darkness, where you can deplete the turn meter by 100% on a 4-turn cooldown. All round, great champion, simple but effective. A great filler one if you don't have other options out there. Next up from the Dark Elves is going to be Psylar. And Psylar's a great option as well, as like everyone else on this list, YST. Stop repeating yourself. But what she could do is place a decreased speed and decreased turn meter by 40% on a 4-turn cooldown. She does have decreased accuracy to mitigate the debuffs throwing you away from the Dark Fae herself. And then also an AoE skill to try and help yourself out through the waves. But this A3 here is actually a very cool one to have 2 abilities in 1 skill here on a 4-turn. Going into the Knight's Revenant, we got Georgid the Breaker. I'm pretty sure nobody has this champion. Maybe you do, I don't know. But I definitely don't. And he actually has a really good kit for the Dark Fae. I was surprised, because he actually decreased the turn meters of all targets by 30%, and this cannot be resisted, meaning you do not need accuracy stats. So if you think about when you go up against the mirror copies, you do the AoE, you're definitely going to kill them all with a Georgid. You will also reduce the turn meter of the boss itself, right? In that same turn. And I think that's phenomenal. Allows you to get back into the fight, and it's going to be really good on that 3-turn cooldown. And apart from that, has a chance of repeating attacks and dealing a big bunch of damage, so you can be used as your DPS for the boss itself. So Georgid the Breaker, actually really good for the Dark Fae here. Of course, Ninja's going to be on the list, mainly for the burns, right? It's going to be very good for this, that hail burn, chunking down that boss's HP like no man's business. But we don't really like to talk about Ninja around here because you can't get him anymore, but a very good option for this boss for sure. One of the best, and also places a freeze on the waves as well. And a drop defense. Really, really good. Geomancer can be an option here. Of course, he has that turn meter reduction on a 3-turn cooldown. He also has that weaken in there to amplify your damage. He's got an A1 decreased accuracy, and the main thing you'll be using him is for this, and also the damage mitigation in case you take a hit, right? But fitting your turn meter by the amount the target loses actually puts him in a rhythm of making sure you can take more of this turn, because he's immediately granting extra turn meter, right? So a really, really good turn meter reduction champion here. So the one that's in the thumbnail, I'm pretty sure many people are intrigued of this one because he's a part of the Raz and Scarhide fusion. And he goes by the name of Lich. Now, I'm not sure if he's been buffed or something, okay? But his kit is really good for this, because A1 decreased accuracy, it's okay. A2 increased defense on this champion, adds to his sustainability. But his A3 with Innovation attacks one enemy, decreases the target's turn meter by 100%, whilst also placing the big variation of decreased speed for 2 turns. This is amazing on a 3-turn cooldown, guys. Amazing. Astounding, actually. Like, as you've seen with some of the other champions, they're all 4 turns or maybe even 5 turns. A 3-turn cooldown on Lich. This is really good, man. I'm actually so hyped to see this kit. Like, you could potentially just get away with, if you want to use it, if you've got spares and you're ready to use Razin, you could book this up, right? Get 2 of the most crucial things out there if you don't have other options like decreased speed. you're going to be good. Or even if you just want to use him for turn meter. So, yeah. Actually, a surprising one, I'd say, for me. I did not expect Lich to make this list today. Next up, it's going to be old Grhukkus. If I can remember where he's from. I'm so bad at this. I'm looking in Skinwalkers and you guys are probably laughing at me. Definitely not a lizard. Is he an Ogrin? There he is. Old Grhukkus. I always think that that's his head, but it's not. This is his head here. What you can do is you can place a decreased speed debuff and also a chance of decreasing turn meter in the same skill on a 3-turn cooldown. Very good. A1 Leech allows you to heal right, and also a decreased attack and heal reduction. So overall, a relatively good kit here, but the chances are just... Actually, no, they are really good here. I just wish that this could have been a 100% chance to decrease turn meter. Right? Would have made it a lot more viable, but still a decent option out there for sure. Cillian the Lucky from the Bannerlords has actually very good kit for this with the... Where is he? Lucky the Irish, shout out to Nub Rates. He has a chance of stealing 50% of the target's current turn meter, right? It's going to make him take more turns here on a 3-turn cooldown. That's actually very good. A2, block active skills could be good for killing the mirror copies, but also a decreased speed A1 with some turn meter manipulation by stealing it as well. So he's like a stealing turn meter, Energizer Bunny, brings in crucial debuffs, one not to miss out on if you don't have the options. Basileus Roanas from the High Elves. One of the most underrated ones out there. 100%. Because AoE stun, 100% chance. This is going to be useful for so many areas of this game, not just for the Dark Fae. But it hits relatively hard here and also decreases the turn meter by 50% if the stun debuff is not placed. What can't be stunned, guys? We can't stun the Dark Fae, therefore 50% turn meter is in the bag. But against the mirror copy in the same phase reducing turn meter, very good synergy. With this skill here, it's going to deal some very good damage for the boss itself, and then also a block buff on the A1. So overall, mainly for this skill here, really, really good. But it is on a 4-turn cooldown, and that's something to note there. Next up on the list is going to be Vlad the Nightborn from the Undead Hordes. Where are you, buddy? Vlad. Dad. Bad. Mad. He has an A1 to destroy max HP. He has a turn meter reduction with Leech debuffs as well. So it only decreases because they're not from specific factions, of course. But still very good, right? On a 100% chance with the Leech. He has a chance of placing drop defense as well and a perfect veil on himself. So very similar to that Seize effect. If he's got the highest attack in your team and you want somebody else to get banished, being in your lead position, you can actually open up with this, place the drop defense, kill the mirror copies, veil himself, lead position the target you want to get stolen, and kaboom. You're not going to have an issue with this. So definitely a cool one out there. Next up is a free champion from the Knights Revenant, I believe. No? Yakarl. Where's Yakarl from? Sacred Order. Oh my god, I'm so bad at the factions. Barbarians? There he is. I keep forgetting these factions, man. But yeah, A1, chance of freeze, nothing to write home about. Attacks one enemy has a chance of placing a decreased speed. Very good. And also stealing 100% of the target's turn meter and an increased speed on this champion. Very, very good synergy here with the Blizzard Rider for sure. And I'm pretty sure many of you guys have him. Also attacks all enemies has a chance of placing a freeze, and this chance increases 100% against targets with 75% or more turn meter. So we're not going to be worrying about the freeze. It's mainly just for this A2, but it's going to be very good. But this A3 could kill the mirror copies for you. So this next champion is from the Ogrins, and it might be surprising to some of you, and he goes by the name of Maneater. And with this ancient blood, he places it unkillable. It's not really what we're using him for. But with a Siphon on a 3-turn cooldown can fully deplete a target's turn meter. And that's very strong, right? Like, put some accuracy on this dude on a 3-turn cooldown with the decreased attack as well. I think he's a simple but effective one to put out there. Like, I didn't really think of it before, but when I was actually deep diving into turn meter manipulators, does the job, right? From the Sacred Order, we got Assassin's Creed, Holsring. And what he can do is attacks this one here, attacks 4 times at random, and each has a chance of placing a hex, debuff for 3 turns, and specific factions cannot resist this. But each also has a 100% chance of stealing 25% of the target's turn meter and 50% from other factions. This is very good because he's stealing it, enabling him to take more turns, so that 4-turn cooldown can effectively be closer to that 3-turn. But if this champion's turn meter is at 75% or more after the steal, will place a perfect veil on himself, very similar to the Seize and the Vlad, right? So being your highest attack champion, you might want him to not get stolen, right? But overall, really, really good here. Increased attack as well. I like him. Simple but effective. Dark Elhain makes the list next. With the Veins of Ice, will instantly remove any freeze debuffs on this champion and replaces them with a 30% increased crit rate, crit damage, strengthen, and freeze when it's on this champion, okay? But then on the Lethal Winter, will fill this champion's turn meter by 25% and instantly activates the Death's Majesty skill whenever this champion or an ally receives a freeze debuff. So if you can utilize this to your advantage with this passives leading into the A2, you're going to be able to kill the mirror copies and it's going to be very good. And that decreased speed is phenomenal for the boss, of course. Tuhak The Wanderer from the Orcs. I actually used them in the faction games. Where is he? Tuhak The Wanderer. He's a void. There he is. And on his A2, he has a chance of placing a decreased speed and increased speed on this champion as well for 2 turns. So decreased speed, very strong. On the Clever Brutality, has a chance of stealing turn meter and steals 100% if this champion has less than 50% HP, which might not come into the equation, but if it does, it's going to be good. But just a 50%, still very beneficial. And the A1 has a chance of increasing the cooldown of a target's skills, which is not going to help a lot. But for decreased speed and for turn meter stealing, very good option being a void, for sure. Next up is going to be acrizia from the Dwarfs. And acrizia is mainly going to be for the max HP nukes, right? She's got a bit of, where is it? Everything. But she has a chance of stealing turn meter is what I wanted to show. Like, she steals turn meter whilst also doing max HP, and the effect cannot be resisted if the target has a higher max HP, which the bosses are going to have, of course. So probably the best option. Like, I want acrizia for mine. You just go pew pew pew, get through that boss, and it's like, what? Was that it? Let's just get that lethal gear. It's good for our account. Next up is going to be Countess Lich from the Demon Spawn. Where's Countess Lich? Boom, the counterpart to Astranyx. And the way that I used to use this back in the day was attacks all enemies 3 times, has a chance of placing a decreased speed, but each hit also has a chance of decreasing the turn meter by 10%, which can be a 30% value taken down to 15%. So not the craziest in the world, but for that setup phase, very good. But the time dilation is very, very underrated because she does the turn meter reduction, we spoke about that, but decreasing the cooldown of ally skills except this champion by 1 turn can bring around those cooldowns, those max HPs, those turn meter reduction effects, and it can actually put you in a better position in the longevity of a fight. So very good at time dilation and also a weaken A1 to amplify damage. Very big fan of Countess Lich here. Next up is going to be ally attack champions in general, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you want to bring in somebody like a Longbeard, you go through Boom with like some of a AoE A1 like Biggin or something. He's got turn meter reduction as well, and it's just really good. And if you've got multiple like Allures or something, you're going to be chunking down so much turn meter with like an ally attacker. It's going to be good, but he's good for the weaken as well, and damage output, so not a bad option with Longbeard here. Last but not least, we've got Hegemon from the legendaries. Hegemon monsters. Who remembers Digimon? I used to love that. You can actually come through the crippling cold, kill everybody. He's going to go first regardless of speed, and then boom. You're going to be able to take down your mirror copies in a damage build. But he also has a decreased speed A1, so if you're struggling with that, he's going to be able to implement that into your team. And actually, I'm not done here. We've got the Stitch Beast from the Undead Hordes, a common champion. Now, I doubt anybody's going to use this. Oh, no, is he uncommon? Is he a rare? Oh, he's for uncommon or a rare. Oh, maybe. I don't know. I'm losing the plot here at this point. But he actually has a chance of placing a weaken. It's a low chance, but a nice variation here. He has a chance of stealing, decreasing 100% turn meter. Like, on a 4-turn cooldown, if you've not got other options, why not, right? Bring in a Stitch Beast if you know you're not taking any damage, and this is all you need at the cost of rare books. Stitch Beast is gonna put in the work and then leave stitches on the boss. We've also got a Prosecutor from the Shadowkin, right? Prosecutor, no. Sylvan Watchers. Oh, no, she's a high elf. She's a high elf, I remember. I did a guide on her. So she actually has an increased accuracy, which is going to alleviate some of those stats for you. She has a chance of placing the heal reduction, a decreased speed, right? That's something we're looking for on a 3-turn cooldown, and also an A1 turn meter reduction, which is on a low chance. So once again, not the best option, but can definitely fulfill in many teams. So guys, that is going to be all for the list today. Hopefully you guys found this beneficial to maybe bring in some options and understand the mechanics of the boss. I really put a lot of work into this one. I didn't want to leave any stones unturned. And if you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to hit that like, subscribe button. It does help me bring out more videos like these and helps me to know that you guys really enjoy them. Have an amazing weekend, and I'll catch you guys in a video soon. And good luck on your Dark Fae farming. Peace.